Thank you. We are now recording, and we are now ready for our special meeting. We'll call this meeting to get to order. Can we do a roll call?
President Lesane.
Present.
Vice President Mitchell.
Present.
Director Nichols.
Present.
Director Mason.
Present.
Director Berg.
We'll now move to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Saltzman, would you like to announce what the agenda is?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to the public. This afternoon's agenda contains a segment for the board to receive the first of the 4 strategic plan updates.
Fantastic. And if we would, we approve the agenda by general consent with all directors' approval. We'll now step forward. The next item on the agenda is the work study session, which will start with the strategic initiative updates. And I will turn the control of the meeting over to Mr. Gunn.
Good evening, members of the board and the superintendent and members of the audience. I am very happy to be here tonight to present to you the first of 4 strategic updates, a study session. Tonight we will be covering 3 strategic initiatives, and there will be, over the next 3 months after this, there will also be a study session each month where we will be covering 3 strategic initiatives. So in all, there will be 12 initiatives presented over the next 4 months. It's just a reminder of some information that we covered with you about a week ago when we previewed this presentation. We are providing you a number of opportunities tonight. One is a tactical level information and updates on the work of the initiative teams throughout the district. And this provides you an opportunity to monitor the progress of the work in the district. Also, we will be providing you an opportunity to reflect of the effects of this work on the strategic objectives as well as our priority student outcomes. And our hope is that you will have conversations among you, board members, and then also with members of the audience here around those topics. We provided to you tonight 2 handouts. The first one is a laminated copy of the strategic plan framework in front of you. And we've provided little signs, little post-it notes off to the left that indicate which of the strategic initiatives we are focusing on tonight. Then you also have a little worksheet with the questions and the initiatives indicated on there. Just for your use to take notes as you listen to the presentation and want to keep notes of some of the topics you'd like to bring up. I wanted to remind you that the work that you will be hearing about tonight is not only the work of the strategic initiative owners that will be actually doing the presentations tonight, but also the teams that have been formed around those initiatives that they're leading, and then also the executive level sponsors is what we call them. And that is the executive cabinet members whose job it is to help ensure the success of those initiatives. So with that, I'll pass the microphone over to the first presenter tonight, which is Dave Peters, presenting on the strategic initiative A1A to develop shared practices utilizing social emotional learning, restorative practice, and culturally responsive tenets.
Well, excuse me, good evening, President Lesane, fellow Board of Directors, Dr. Saltzman, and the community. It's my pleasure tonight to share with you the current status of Strategic Plan Initiative A1A. I am the initiative owner and my executive sponsor is Dr. Peter Scott. Starting at the bottom of the pyramid, so to speak, this strategic initiative is under Theme A, encompassing a supportive culture where each student is engaged, thrives, and values learning. This initiative is under Objective 1, to expand the opportunity for each student and staff member to experience positive relationships that support students' holistic needs. And Strategic Initiative A1A was created to develop shared practices and training utilizing SEL, restorative practice, and culturally responsive tenets. Currently, we are on track to complete our scheduled component timelines for this initiative. All right, this evening, I will be sharing with you what we've been able to accomplish to this point since the summer, with some examples also to celebrate. I'll also share with you the measures we're using to gauge our progress, and we'll take a look forward to where we're heading next. It's important to understand that the action items within this initiative were chosen because of their sustainability over the life of the strategic plan and their ability to be taken to scale. All right, so as you have heard prior to today's presentation, Ruler is a systemic approach to social emotional learning that's developed at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. Ruler aims to infuse the principles of emotional intelligence into the immune systems of schools, so to speak, informing how leaders lead, teachers teach, students learn, and families support students. Ruler is an acronym, and that represents the 5 skills that stand for recognition, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions. This past August, the secondary administrators received training on Ruler to complement the training that their core teams received last winter. As well, each middle and high school team has begun rolling out aspects of the Ruler skills and anchor tools to their staffs this year through the Learning Improvement Days and staff meetings, as well as Learning Improvement Fridays, the administrative versions of that. And finally, each certificated and classified support staff will be completing a 4-hour asynchronous Ruler training that's funded through Easter dollars. The staff have through this spring to complete the training modules, and weekly we are receiving verifications of more and more staff already finishing the training. As a staggered implementation, the elementary schools are on a year offset from the secondary schools for Ruler training. So item number 2 there, funding was secured through CCEIS grant, which stands for Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services. And that is in thanks to Kelly Clevenger, who really pioneered that effort for our school district. And we have been accepted for the April to May training timeline for our core teams this spring. And we recently have been communicating that now out through our principals packets, as well as elementary counselor meeting, even as recently as last Thursday. So item 3, they're complete. This is providing professional development for elementary teachers in the secondary, our second step curriculum. The counselors, as you may know, in the past, were responsible for teaching the second step curriculum to the elementary students. And we made a transition this year so that the teachers are now teaching that second step curriculum to the kids. This provides more regularity of the social emotional learning instruction, and it embeds it into more of the cultural fabric at each school. We also partnered with Forefront in the Schools through the University of Washington to align our schools, starting with the high schools, in suicide prevention and crisis plan analysis development. And this past October, our core teams engaged in a fall academy. We are in phase 1 this year, and one of the significant priorities is to develop a comprehensive crisis plan to include the key aspects of infrastructure, prevention, intervention, reentry, and postvention. For item 5, we're all familiar with the Panorama student survey. The Panorama provides a valid and reliable way to measure and improve social emotional learning in Everett Public Schools. The survey was administered in October, and the analysis of the results have been to date useful from district and school level perspectives to inform the areas of growth and next steps. Item 6, regarding restorative practices. Another component of Initiative A1A is to develop shared practices and training around restorative practices. Utilizing the best practices established by IIRP, which is the International Institute for Restorative Practices. We've been using a train the trainer model at several schools with their teams, and with the ultimate goal of establishing trainers at each school site. So Ruler, as you know, expands, or you may not know, it spans across each element of Initiative A1A. It's the intersection of social emotional learning and culturally responsive tenets. The emotions matter mindset has, from a student perspective, is really important. It's not just seen as distinct categories, right? From a student perspective, they see themselves as all of the issues that go into their struggles and successes as an individual, and specifically in regards to learning and in their relationships and interactions with others. And so that's been a celebration. We've begun to see more of that through the staff, their understanding of the importance of that. And as we continue throughout this year, so that when we roll this out to students next year, for example, it won't just be another thing that we've learned and that we're teaching to kids, but it's something that's ingrained again into the fabric of what we do. And because this is an emotions-based piece that applies to every one of us, a lot of our staff in conversations and in feedback have relayed to us how much they've benefited from this personally. And they've been able to utilize some of these strategies already in their own relationships with their spouses and either other relationships outside of work as well. The photo in the bottom left-hand corner is a picture of Sequoia High School. They were leading the way with Ruler during the August Learning Improvement Day. They've really taken hold of this and have run with it, and in a lot of ways are leading a lot of the anchor tool pieces with their staff. And the photo up in the top right on the October Learning Improvement Day, this is a picture of the student support services. We went through restorative practices training together, and really focusing on the inclusion piece, the aspects of that are nurtured when mechanisms are in place to repair relationships and classroom communities. And to date, we have 9 schools that have been trained and have trained the trainers now, as well as 2 departments in our district. So staff are completing the Ruler training now and on a regular basis. We've asked them as an expectation to have 100% completion of the 2-hour modules, as well as earning 10 out of 10 on their assessments, which they can retake as many times as they need to, but we do see it as really important, and so we have been holding that, and again, this is a celebration that we're seeing more and more staff each week complete this training. Evidence of the spread of second step is increasing, and I think there are examples that have been seen during the instructional reviews. Some of you may have seen some of these as well, where you have terminology that's posted out on the hallways or embedded in classrooms. It's becoming more and more part of every school. And in addition to the collaborative support we've been receiving for our crisis plan development for Forefront in the schools, they've also been providing a wealth of free resources to the partner schools that are part of Forefront in the schools. So for example, they offered a DBT, dialectical behavior therapy training, that is typically pretty expensive, and they offered that for free, and a number of our counselors took advantage of that within the last month and a half or so. We also were able to preview a film that's coming out called Race to be Human, And we were given a couple of links for free that a number of us previewed, again, as part of the strategic plan, and especially in a couple of our departments that overlap with our strategic plan initiatives. So there's just a wealth of resources that it's a huge celebration to be part of that group. And Panorama results, those show that as a district, we have seen an increase in every measured category at every level over the survey results from last spring. So that is a celebration for us currently as well. And again, with sustainability and scalability in mind, the progress that has been made in this initiative, referenced earlier, is measured against the following indicators to provide information about the structures and the investments made. So we have, we're disaggregating the Panorama data still school by school and having conversations as a district. Elementary teams are conducting walkthroughs with the MTSS facilitators, administrators, counselors. And because middle school students have up to 6 different teachers, 7 different teachers at times, and the middle schools each have slightly different bell schedules as well. They're being creative for scheduling and intentional in how they're implementing the second step lessons to avoid redundancy and, again, to still provide alignment. So as far as next steps, the annual Stakeholder Survey will be given for the second time in the month of March through Panorama. So previously, that was the EES survey, if you recall. And so last year was the first time that we embedded it within the Panorama survey so that students, for example, didn't have to take 2 different surveys, right? So we've combined that together. That's allowing us more consistency. And so that, again, will be in March. As far as Ruler, we will continue to provide supports and monitoring as school staff complete the 4-hour course training. For restorative practices, one area of the initiative that particularly requires, this is one of those areas that requires a little bit of the navigating with the COVID environment as we work to identify opportunities to provide training at teams at each school. And you can imagine right now that's, they're keeping schools open and they're doing those things to maintain that. So when we have any opportunities that come up and school teams are ready for us to continue to engage with that, we're really looking forward to those opportunities as well. And the high school forefront teams are collaborating on January 27th, and then for a full day on February 15th for crisis plan priorities for development. And so at this point, we wanted to have a couple of questions for you for clarification or for reflection. So what effect will this work have on achieving this strategic initiative or objective? And what effect will this have on our priority student outcomes? And so if there's any feedback with that or any other questions or clarifications, I can answer those for you.
Directors, do you have any questions or clarifications you requested?
I have a few questions.
Recommendation.
Yeah, so first off, for Ruler, we're starting in the secondary schools and then moving to elementary. And I just know from personal experience, some kids, even at 19, can't name their emotion. So I wonder, is there a best age to start this? Since we're starting at the upper levels, my guess is upper level, but I wonder about those elementary school kids when they start to feel them. Is there a way to help them earlier? But why did we start with older versus, I was going to say elderly students versus younger students?
There really isn't a hard, fast rule or recommendation even from Ruler on when to start, but they definitely, it spans elementary up through high school. And so they focus it a little bit different. The lessons are more age appropriate. And so there are lessons and ways of communicating so that they're not redundant year to year, but they kind of expand on prior year's lessons and that. And the reason why we started with the secondary is because the elementary already had second step.
Okay.
And so we recognized, especially going into the pandemic, that we needed to put some things in place. We needed to really think ahead and put some things in place for the secondary students to move forward. And so once we did that, and of course, it has an expense to it. But then once Kelly Clevenger was able to secure some of that grant money for us for the elementary, we were able to see that as an opportunity to just simply stagger it a year later. And then also because the elementary teachers were learning this year how to implement Second Step themselves, we didn't want to put too much on that plate in that. So we have worked, there are some other districts that locally even that they integrate Second Step and Ruler. So we're not eliminating Second Step. That question sometimes comes up, that those two can work very, very well together. Since one is more of a curriculum and another is more of an approach.
Well, what I see is understanding what you're doing and doing it. So that's, so if you understand it, but you're still misbehaving versus not understanding and misbehaving.
Yeah.
The second thing for regards to that, is there any parent or family information that goes home? Because if the child is, showing behaviors at school, they're probably showing them at home too, to help the parents reinforce the language the children are learning in school?
Yeah. So there really are several different phases. So the first phase is to have a core team trained, which we did that last winter. This year, it's training the staff. Next year, we'll be rolling that out to students and also families. So the training does expand out to families as well. And obviously, there's a lot of research, but the more that we can help with that education too, right? You start to peel off when we consider it even a tier 1 level education, even with families, then the students will, because a lot of times what happens, they bring issues to school, right? That happen outside of school. So the more we can help educate that and use, again, similar terminology, similar strategies, then we can see that as, even impacting in a positive way schools here too. Yeah.
Thank you. And then just two other questions quickly. The UW grant program for suicide in high schoolers, but we unfortunately have had at least one that I can think of, suicide in middle school. So what is the help for the middle schoolers when it comes to the suicide prevention? Because it does happen that young.
Right. So we currently utilize signs of suicide. So we have suicide prevention programs and modules that are taught.
I remember when my daughter was at middle school, but
yeah.
Okay.
So we have that as well. So in Forefront, it specifically focuses with high school. I mean, that's really their ideal, is to focus on the high schools. Then once you get the high school teams trained and you get the real solid base, then as a district, we can help move that down to the other levels as well.
I mean, it's also rate of return. I mean, it's highest risk to the rare risk, but it's still risk. So we have a program there. Last question is about moving the Second Step from the counselors to the teachers, and with teachers having so much on their plate, some of them probably do like having these skills, but what is the principal's role in reinforcing that and making sure that the teachers are competent and confident in that program in their classroom versus depending on the counselor?
So the principal's role in helping
to support the teachers.
To support the teacher.
Here's one more thing the teachers have to do,
right,
that they can't just send the kid to the office to talk to the counselor. They're having to do these behaviors in the classroom or manage these behaviors in the classroom. And just to make sure that they understand the Second Step, understand the phases, confident and using it effectively.
Yeah. Well, what we wanted to make sure to do, one of the reasons why we,
that, I'll correct.
Yeah, the reason why we transitioned it to teachers is that social emotional learning is so important for everyone to understand. This is an integral part of education, right? You can't separate it. I mean, for many years, we have tried to separate it out. But again, from a student's perspective, they are all of these things at once, right? It's not just I'm focusing on a content area today. I'm feeling a lot of emotions right now, and I can't hear what you're saying until I'm ready for it. So creating safe environment, and these are really actually part of TPEP and everything else, right? In a lot of these emotional domains. But so it's a matter of, so not compartmentalizing it. So the social emotional learning, well, that's the counselor's job, right? This is all of our job. This is all of our, everyone in the district has a role in that. And really, I think, adding on to the 4 pillars, right? Culture and climate as well, 2 of those, that it's important. It fits in there with all of us. So the principal's role in that is, as you said, it's to help support the teachers in this. They do have a lot on their plates. But the counselors still are the experts in their buildings. With that, they've taught Second Step for many, many years. And so it's not that we've asked the counselors to completely step away from that, right? So the principal sort of maintains that vision, helps provide the support, but the counselors are still integral in helping provide that professional development and training for teachers that might need a little bit more or that have additional questions.
Thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Director Nichols?
Just one question. For the asynchronous training on Ruler, we're making sure that folks are doing that during their paid time, correct?
What was the last part? Sorry.
The asynchronous training for Ruler, we're making sure folks are doing that during their paid time, correct?
They're doing that if they do it during their contract day. If the schools can. I don't know of any schools that are able to do that. So they're doing this outside of their contract day, and that's why we're compensating them for that.
So we are compensating them one way or another.
One way or another, right?
So it's either done during the day or we're paying them for the hours they're spending on it outside of the classroom. Okay.
But we were anticipating that it may not be possible to have 4 hours carved out of learning improvement days, staff meeting times, and that. So we wanted to make this is important enough to make sure that staff did have this training, and that's why we pursued the funding.
Director Mason?
I just want to say thank you so much for your work and your team's work on this. I see it as one of the benefits, which are very few, of the pandemic coming along, because it's really honed our focus in on this and sort of required that we up our game a little bit and take a really hard look at this. And I think that's really is going to support a lot of our strategic initiatives. And the great thing is, first of all, we need it more than ever right now at this point in time, but this is something that's going to live in our schools for a long time to come in the future. And so I'm really excited to see all this work being done. It is a lot. Some of my concerns were shared with Director Mitchell about, how much are we putting on teachers and staff to learn all these new things, but it's kind of something that just can't be ignored or pushed down the road. So thank you. And then one of my questions was around parents, and I think you addressed that with Director Mitchell, but just wondering what that plan looks like to be able to share more of this with the families that we serve.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Director Mason and Director Mitchell had my questions, and exactly with how are we engaging families and parents so that they are also involved in being educated, because sometimes they can see a situation or see a concern much sooner than our teachers or our counselors. And how are we helping our parents navigate through this process too, and help our students? I know through the pandemic, it's very difficult to allow parents into training, but how, I guess my question is very similar to Director Mason's. How are we in the future going to provide some type of opportunity for parents to also be engaged in training for those that see it on a regular basis that might need or want that extra assistance?
Yeah. So if that's a question,
Yes.
I would just say that right now the hows are still to be worked out, but we will be providing opportunities for training and opportunities for engagement with families around Ruler.
And I thank you very much, because like it's been said, this is going to stay with us for many, many years to come. And our students will benefit from this. And so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we head into another strategic initiative where there's a lot of passion around. And I did want to just mention that one of the departments I lead has recently had restorative practice introductions, I should say. And it was very, very helpful for our own department in understanding how that all works. So, but going on, we have now initiative A2B, and this is Joy Odom Grant presenting the work around a strategic initiative to implement culturally responsive policies and programs that allow students to see themselves throughout the learning environment.
Good evening, President Lassane, fellow board members, Dr. Salzman, and the community. It is a joy to share and provide you with up-to-date information with Strategic Initiative A2B. I am the initiative owner, Joy Odom Grant, with a team, and Deputy Superintendent Dr. Peter Scott is the executive sponsor. The Strategic Initiative implement culturally relevant policies and programs that allow students to see themselves throughout the learning environment. The strategic objective: create research-based, culturally engaging opportunities where each student feels safe to engage and socially identify. The strategic theme: supportive culture where each is engaged, thrives, and values learning. The green circle represents that the work scheduled for this year is on track for completion. The agenda for the presentation will include the following: the great milestones and timeline, celebrations and examples of recent work, performance measures, next steps, and an opportunity for questions and discussion. I would like to highlight 4 incredible deliverables, actions, or activities that has happened within the last 6 months that supports this initiative, A2B. I will give you a brief description of each. The 4 are Equity-Focused Lit Day, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Materials, Refresh the DEI Work Plan, and the Natural Leaders Family Engagement Day. The first one, on October 15th, 2021, was a scheduled Lit Day, an Equity Learning Improvement Day. To advance the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, as we know, OSPI, its vision to improve equity and inclusion efforts for all staff. Over 2,000 staff members were engaged with interactive activities led by their school-based or department leaders. Our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department planned and executed a full 6-hour day, a planning structure to provide resources intentionally chosen to support staff on a continuum of equity stages. We know we are on different stages, from awareness to action and sustainability. This allowed our leaders to identify appropriate resources that would meet staff where they were on their equity journey. To differentiate further, resources were then broken down into either instructional or operational. Within each part, and in collaboration with a few other departments, provided a range of research-based, culturally awareness and relevant resources to support the leaders in this planning. This 5-part structure day began with a district-wide equity support message from our superintendent, Dr. Ian Salzman. The Equity-Focused Learning Improvement Day included a choice of 3 video vignettes from Bill De La Cruz. Another part of the Lit Day was an opportunity to sharpen school improvement plans and department action plans. This time was to be intentional about creating actions needed to address all students. And more important, a critical section was elevating stakeholder voices. We found it very relevant to uplift our Everett Public Schools community stakeholder voices. Our DEI department was able to have a pre-recorded conversation with students, community partners, and district departments. The heartfelt videos were available for schools and departments to share with staff to help in their actions that would allow students to see themselves throughout the learning environment. As a result of the planning and execution of this Lit Day, this action was intentional to be impactful for our over 20,000 plus students we serve. The extension of Lit Day, or days and months after, was to lead us into a year of intentionality. The action was ESSER funded. In collaboration with the Equity and Access Council, we developed a one voice and one message statement to communicate with all stakeholders the purpose of the libraries. Also, in collaboration with the district librarians, we are creating a book list and developmentally and culturally relevant literature. Research-based book justifications will be provided for each book purchase. An annual review feedback process will be created to elevate the developmentally appropriate and culturally relevant materials. Refresh the diversity, equity, and inclusion work plan. By the end of this month, our DEI department will refresh the work plan to ensure the work is aligned to this initiative and other strategic plan initiatives, and the coordination of work across departments to help in the development of a common language, cultural identity, including race, ethnicity, disability, gender, class, religion, and sexual orientation. Lastly, our Natural Leaders and Family Engagement Day, scheduled for March 22. Providing PTSA and natural leaders' families with key information about policies, procedures, and participation to assist with student learning and partnership. Its purpose is to increase our partnerships with our families who may not normally see themselves throughout the learning environment. Families will support their children, our students. Celebrations. Everyone is welcomed here. For the Learning and Improvement Day, we created a resource page within the Canvas portal or landing page for our district leaders to choose a variety of diverse materials and resources to assist in the development and planning of their Lit Day. As an extension of the Equity Lit Day, each leader was given a hardcover book, Dictionary for a Better World, that includes poems, quotes, and anecdotes from A to Z, and a Be Kind button to wear. Another celebration is the beginning of a diverse list of materials for our elementary and secondary libraries, but with it includes a one voice and one message to support our staff if needed as an explanation on why we have a collection and reflection of materials that support all students. And lastly, there are videos that reflect our celebrations of Lit Day. In addition to the Harmony of Lit Day, a video montage of pictures that captured that day. You'll see small groups, there are whole groups, a panel of stakeholders, the change you want to see. It was shared because of the planning and implementation of the Lit Day by all of our leaders. Performance of the activities can be measured in various ways. The frontline evaluations, after the professional learning, feedback using frontline, a specific survey for the Lit Day facilitators. The Lit Day facilitators were our principals as well as department leaders on how the DEI department supported in the preparation. Specific feedback from our stakeholders, our natural leaders, our PTSA is important because when parents are involved, it increases in academic success. Our Equity and Access Advisory Council, we meet often to assist in the decision-making of equity district-wide supports. We are partnered with the district librarians to ensure appropriate rollout for the usage of the diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused library materials. Everett Public Schools is rich in culture with a diverse community that represents and speaks over 90 different languages. We are a school district that values each other's and each one of our community partners, their experiences, our culture, and beliefs, and traditions. To respect the diversity, we are working on creating and developing a formal calendar that honors our family's diverse culture and religious beliefs and practices. With this district calendar, we hope to bring awareness of specific high-impact observances that may impede student learning due to school absences or fasting. Our infinity spaces or groups. This will allow students who share an identity, usually our marginalized identity, to gather, talk in a space about issues related to that identity, and transfer that discussion into action that makes more for a more equitable experience at school. Thank you, and you are appreciated for your time and attention. At this time, do you have any questions for clarification? And I encourage you to reflect with each other, what effect will this work have on achieving this strategic objective? And what effect would this have on our priority student outcomes? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Grant. Directors, does anyone have any questions for clarifications?
Oh, didn't want to go first, but I guess I'm
Go
only.
right ahead.
I just want to acknowledge the fact that I appreciate that you call it an equity journey, because I think that helps everyone feel safe, no matter where they are on that journey. And then my second thing, for those vignettes from the community, the students, is there any way the board can see those?
Absolutely.
I don't know if they're, private, but if there's a way that we could come in and see them, or if they could get loaded on like an executive session on board docs or something. I want to keep the privacy of whoever was speaking, but it sounds like it could be something good for us to hear too. And then the last thing, because I didn't say this last time, the work having achievements, really reflecting on our role in this, is that a lot of this money is from the last objective, and this objective is coming from ESSER and grants. There might be grants that will continue this, but ESSER will run out. So it's sort of how much is this going to cost for us to maintain? Because I don't think the last one or this one do we want to get rid of. I don't want to get rid of. So it is just at what point is it going to be self-funded, is my question. And I think for both of these, if we can help the whole child inside and out, I think that will improve their outcomes. I think that could be our missing link.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Any Director Mason?
I was just thinking about this work and sort of, the performance measures. A lot of it is sort of anecdotal. We just don't have ways to measure equity. But I think, if we were to get another update in the future as this work becomes more ingrained in our schools, it would be great to hear a little more student voice about the impacts in the classrooms of how that's changing cultures at high schools and middle schools, maybe more specifically, just given the news that we read about some of these issues with, other districts and such. As a director, it's our goal and our opportunity to communicate with our constituents about this kind of work. There are some folks that are trying to define this work in a different way than it actually is. And so to have those real stories would be exceptionally helpful in helping other people understand why this is so important.
Sure, thank you.
And does the Panorama Survey have any questions that deal with this, so that we have
Yes.
baseline and then we can see through change? So
Yes.
it's not another survey. So it's a great question.
That's
And I think that the language you're using here, I think will hopefully help our community, because it's about equity and access. And like I said, the equity journey, we're all some different place on there, and to give the grace no matter where the person is and help them learn. So thank you.
I would like to also see some more information regarding the librarian's work, as far as inclusive material, as far as books. I know it's all subjective, but it does, they are more in tune with how different books provide that outlook of being inclusive into our community. And I would like to find out how are we making it equitable across the district, i.e. not at one high school versus another high school or middle school versus another, for, age-appropriate books, but that it is shared amongst the others. And just like it has been brought up that ESSER monies may run out, how can we continue this going forward? And what additional costs might be involved? This is important work, and we need to know how we can place the funding where it's appropriately needed in order to ensure that it is across the board and not at one high school versus another, one middle school versus another, or elementary school, that it is something that is shared across the district. And there is buy-in from all librarians.
For sure, thank you.
But I wouldn't want to pass up an opportunity to mention that our two levies, the EP&O levy in particular, supports a lot of this work. So when the ESSER funding runs out, having those two levies in place will be exceptionally important.
I just thought of another thing, though, to help how we can educate the community, that we have such a robust Twitter feed. It is, what are some of those books that are showing up in our library, to take photos of them, to show that we're not just bringing in what some people might think is diversity, but here are some books that we've brought in about, women leaders, Black women leaders, Latinas women leaders. It's, what are
Great
some of the
idea.
books and grade appropriate books? Emerson just got these, Penny Creek just got these, Gateway got these, and everybody's getting them, but, how can those librarians exemplify, show some of that diversity out to the community?
Great idea, thank you.
I'm not a marketer. I'm just
Right. I think it's great that you're using the PTSAs and the natural leaders, but how are we also engaging? Because, you usually find the same parents in those organizations. How are we engaging a larger breadth of parents in other organizations outside of just those two? Because they tend to be well involved in our community, but there's always some that are forgotten, or they feel that their voices aren't being heard. So how are we engaging on the larger breadth of parents?
That's a
involved?
great question, and I respect that question. I can share with you that one of the things that when we started this collaboration is that we learned that the PTSA voice was very loud, and our natural leaders' voices wanted to be just as. So we are in communication with both of our leaders to come up with a message and collaboration, that there's not a one-off on each of them, and all of our families and parents are important. So we do have leaders from both groups that are talking and coming together so that they can present that information together to encourage others to be a part of either organization or both, and it's not a competition.
It's not a competition, it's a collaboration.
Yes.
It's an integration of everybody's voice. And there are some other communities out there too that may feel they're not a part of one or the other of those organizations, but they still want to be a part of, sharing in our students' lives.
And we hope with this conversation that it would invite others and not be an intimidation, but more of a welcoming environment.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for clarification? Thank you very much.
Thank you,
I can
and
see
you're
this
welcome.
working very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward.
All right, so now we have our third of three for this evening. We have a lot of expectations and opportunities for the work in our strategic initiatives, and I think that applies especially to this initiative that focuses around innovation. And so I'm going to introduce right now Brian Beckley, the strategic owner, or the owner of the strategic initiative D2B, which is to foster a culture that promotes, supports, and sustains innovative practices.
Good evening, President Lassane and fellow Board of Directors, Dr. Saltzman, and the community. I'm excited tonight to be able to share with you the current status of our strategic initiative, D2B. I am, as Mr. Gunn introduced me, the initiative owner, Brian Beckley. I represent a team of people that are both operational and instructional. Our Stakeholder initiative team is a nice cross-section of our district, and I get the pleasure of being able to work with them, and I represent them here tonight as I share our update. Our executive sponsor is Dr. Peter Scott, Deputy Superintendent. As Mike shared, the strategic initiative is to foster a culture in a district that promotes, supports, and sustains innovative practices. It's really exciting work, and there's 3 key words in that initiative that we really focus on, the word promote, support, and sustain. And those 3 action words, those 3 really were the foundation of the action plan that we developed about how do we promote it, how do we ensure that there are things in place to support it, and how do we sustain that to really foster a culture that is building a district that is innovative. And so that was the foundation of our plan, and I'll share you the beginning of that plan here tonight and the action items around it. The initiative objective is to increase effective innovative programs and practices, and that is within that the strategic theme of consistency and accountability for key processes, effective student success balanced with differentiation and innovation. I need to note that in our work, executive leadership is key to any successful culture shift. And looking at examples of best practices from around the country, we see how this type of leadership is necessary to provide that solid foundation and sustainability. And one of the things we noted early on in our work is that we have the advantage of having a really visionary school board with executive leadership that understands the importance of innovation, but we also have a superintendent in Dr. Saltzman that models the importance of fostering a culture of innovation. And in this update tonight, I'm going to share several examples of strategies already underway, even before this strategic initiative was initiated in this district, that he brought to us through his own experience and networking of districts from around the country about things we could do in our district that are innovative. And having this leadership is really important in the work that we did and the research that we looked at examples of that type of modeling and support is really important to that sustainability for this initiative. So really excited about working in this district with that type of modeling for us, for our staff to see about being innovative. So with that being said, we believe currently our work is on schedule for this work and is on track. So in the agenda of this portion of the study session, similar to the other, I'll share the key milestones and action items underway. I'll highlight some celebration and examples of recent work, assess how we are doing in fostering innovation in Everett. I'll review the key performance measures that we are looking at as we move forward, and I'll outline the next steps in our action plan and give us time for some dialogue, discussion, and questions. So there are 4 key action items that have started really from the summer up until the present. And over the past few months, there are several milestone deliverables that we have been working on that are highlighted here. During the summer and the start of the school year, our team spent time examining resources, researching best practices, and examples of innovation in public schools. And there are many examples out there of what schools have done to develop innovation in schools and also in departments across K-12 systems in our country. We collected and reviewed these materials and best practices around that, and those were the foundation of informing our action plan. What we heard from our review of best practices is that it is important to draft a common meaning, that you need to start with what does innovation mean to you? It's different in each organization or in each situation, and so that really was the key to where we needed to start. And so that is what we dove right into as we started the school year off, is what does it mean to be what does innovation mean in Everett? We spent time creating that at the beginning of the year, vetted that first with the initiative team, which I shared with you is a nice cross-section of both operational and instructional folks, classified and certificated. And we first put that together as a group and then went through various versions before taking it to cabinet, and then went through various versions with them as well. So that was a nice accomplishment, because that, as I'll share with you, what it meant to us, we needed that before going out and promoting it, that action item, or promoting it with our district. So in order to promote and support innovation, we knew we needed to engage staff. That's key. So we do this through highlighting and celebrating what is already taking place, or what people are trying and what people are doing. That is how you promote and support it at its beginning. We created a shared document for schools and department leaders to give us information on what the innovation strategy is that they're using, what it was addressing, and the details around it. So once we shared that meeting, we asked for, what are some examples you see and some celebrations you see? The belief is that by sharing people's efforts to look at how we can do our work differently, and how people are willing to take risks, to try out new things, we will demonstrate how we as a district support innovation. To promote it with staff, we have created a web page designed for staff to serve as a landing page to read about what others are doing, to provide them resources of ideas and examples of colleagues of what they are doing to foster innovation. And appreciate the partnership with our communications team in the development of that web page. So in our plan for the start of the school year, it has been on emphasizing promoting and supporting innovation, two of the key terms that I mentioned at the beginning. The sustaining of innovation, the third of the key terms in our initiative, will be our continuing work throughout this year and beyond. Here I have some examples of some celebrations in recent work taking place. You can see on the left the brainstorming protocol activity we went through to develop the first draft of the meaning of innovation in Everett Public Schools. And we looked at keywords and phrases that were repeated and held as priorities that we wanted to include in our definition and in our meaning. And this is the draft that I mentioned that we could do it, that we took to cabinet and vetted with them. And we landed on the meaning, which is in the bottom there, of innovation in Everett Public Schools means creating and implementing new and improved ideas with the intent to change practices to work more effectively and efficiently to address challenges and have a positive impact to the district in support of students, staff, and the community. Also pictured here in the center is some of the resources we looked at, just an example of our kind of annotated bibliography that we had several pages of that we used as resources to help guide our action plan. I shared about the landing page where we are sharing our highlights and celebrations of innovation across the system on our website, and you see that pictured on the right of what that looks like, just the screenshot of it. This is what staff can view under staff links once they log into the website. It has the definition and the introduction on the initiative, followed by examples. As we continue to grow this resource, that we'll begin to categorize that into, instructional, academics, operational, different innovation as we continue to build out and organize it kind of by themes for teachers to more easily access. And how people are sharing these ideas with us is using a shared Microsoft form that the principals, I shared this in a principals packet, and they are promoting it with their staff about submitting what these ideas are. And that is what we're using to populate the information that's on the website and then promote that with staff. There are many examples of staff trying new things, which is really exciting, and challenging the status quo to achieve whatever objective they're trying to achieve, and looking at new ways of doing business. And that's really at the core of what it means to be innovative. Really exciting work that principals are supporting and teachers are trying, and principals have submitted ideas as well about strategies they're using in their buildings. So really excited about the start of what people are sharing. One thing I wanted to include here is, and this might seem strange for me to say this, but innovation doesn't always have to be about technology. And I think that's the key, and that when we are talking with our leaders and sharing some examples, and I've got several listed here, they're not always technology-based, and it's really about what the strategies to implement new and improved ideas are to work effectively and more efficiently to address challenges. That's what it means to be innovative, to look at new ways of doing business. And there are many examples, and as I shared at the opening, some of these are examples of strategies that Dr. Saltzman brought with us, of things that colleagues have used or he himself has used outside of Everett that are not always technology-based, but are innovative ways of looking at new ways of doing business, from our targeted selection and recruitment practices that we've started, leadership development with our new Principals Academy to strengthen and support our leaders, instructional reviews, a new way of looking at school improvement efforts and hands-on engagement in the classroom, our interactive flat panel project as a replacement for classroom projectors. I had to put at least one technology thing on the list. Choice programming, Everett Virtual Academy, the diverse outreach programs we are doing with our community about how we are connecting with them using Zoom, or the Let's Talk way that families and well, students can as well, get the information they need in a timely manner. These are all some great examples, along with Parent University, of how we're looking at outreach differently and would be considered and are innovative strategies that are already underway and should be celebrated. So one way we're really gauging how are we doing is anecdotal. Director Mason had said that about the previous, and that really is similar to ours, in that it's really continuing to communicate with our building and department leaders, feedback on the indicators about what does innovation look like in the classroom? What does it look like in your department? And continuing to have a conversation, getting feedback as we engage with our department leaders and our instructional leaders on what it's looking like and what they need support on. We also have a strong connection with our Everett Public Schools Foundation grant application process that is around supporting innovation. So we work really closely with them. And that is going to be a good performance measure about what teachers are trying in the classroom and doing to be innovative. Feedback from our leaders too about how is the staff engaging, assessing, and doing things differently, and hearing some examples of what they have to say, including notes and agendas from their meetings. Do we start to see innovation in school improvement plans or in a department action plan of strategies they're including? And our plan is to continue to have quarterly check-ins with our buildings and department leaders as we move forward. So for next steps, we are going to continue to engage with our district leadership to promote and innovate in their school departments. And as we engage with them, a key aspect of our work together is the balance between loose and tight. I just want to mention that that is an important at the core of this, that concept. We want to be consistent and we want to have accountability for key processes. That's what we're going to be tight about. We have to balance that with fostering a culture where we innovate. And there's a real balance there. Because we want to be consistent, but we want people to innovate. We want to be clear. We don't see them as mutually exclusive, that we can have multiple flowers growing in the same garden. That is why one of our important next step is to establish some parameters for staff to work around of what innovations and measures of success are important to us for next steps. So sort of creating that framework, that sandbox, so to speak, for them to work with them, to help them with that balance of loose and tight. This is a necessary next step for our group, and we'll continue to share in future conversations with the board. I'll have more information about that as in some of those outcomes we have. And that is how we're going to sustain this over time, is once we have promoted it and supported it and gave them those parameters and supported it, that is the sustainability aspect of this. And we will continue to support it by sharing innovation examples from colleagues throughout the year of what it looks like in schools and our departments to be innovative. So if you have any questions for me, I invite you to share those, but also engage with each other on any discussion around innovation and how this can help us achieve our strategic objective and our priority student outcomes.
Well, I thank you very much for your presentation, and I was about to say something, but then you said it. What I liked about your presentation is that it said in there, innovation does not mean it has to be about technology. And that was one thing I was about to say right on, because it doesn't. It has to do with being efficient and being innovative and doing things different, being willing to accept that we could do things differently, and building a culture that's willing to accept that and become more efficient and effective with our students in about learning. So right on with that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Directors, do you have any clarifying questions?
I do
Director
have,
Nichols.
A couple, well, first comment just saying, I'm glad to see that there's a grant portion of this for innovation that's really important to getting people engaged, so that's great. My question, especially as we're moving more into this endemic phase of the pandemic, right? You know, you get a lot of folks are worried about their kids missing a lot of school and things like that. And one of the innovations that came about because of the pandemic was technology in the classroom, technology in the students' homes and things like that. So I'm wondering if there's been any more conversations within this type of innovative framework about how do we support, say, a student who is out on quarantine but is not actually sick, right? Can they still engage in the classroom from home? And I know there's a lot that has to go into that, like bargaining and all those other things, but to me, that's kind of, if we don't capitalize on that piece of it, we're missing an opportunity. So has there been any of that in this?
We have engaged in conversation around how can technology be utilized to differentiate and support individually with different situations, but as a system, you know, creating that as a system, that's something we haven't included in our initiative work, like our initiative team work, but that is something that we do talk about at the leadership level about how to utilize the different options that we have available, the tools we have available to meet the needs of students. That would be a great example of embedding those types of innovative strategies on the webpage to begin to share some of those ideas of what people are trying and schools are using and the district is using. I think those are that is a great example of how we can promote technology in this case to support innovation. And so, yes, that continues to be a conversation, not so much in our action plan, but it is a conversation we're having at leadership.
Director Mason, yes, please.
Yeah, I appreciate you sort of addressed my question with the loose versus tight, because of course, you know, innovation has a lot of starts and stops to it. And, you know, I love that we're able to model that in the classroom for our students so that they can learn the language and sort of engage in innovation themselves. But I guess my question comes, you know, and you, it sounds like maybe there is when you talked about examples and putting parameters around things, but what happens when there's innovation happening that just is detrimental? Like who monitors when people fall out of the sandbox, I guess?
Right. That's why it's going to be the engagement with our leadership is really key in this process around what is the parameters, what are the look fors, what are the success measures, how are they monitoring it? That constant communication with them is going to be key to this, because it's not just anything goes. You can try anything. That's going to be one of the clear. Is it harmful to kids? Is it because the idea is that it's meeting the needs of improving a student's experience and helping them achieve and meet our district's mission. So it's very important that we continue to engage with our leadership team in this work. That's a key aspect of this. And that's why I mentioned at the outset the modeling of executive leadership around showing our leaders what it means to support innovation. because it always comes back to the kids. It always comes back to what's in the best interest of students. And that's modeled for us every day in all that we do. So we just got to continue to engage our leaders in that work.
It would be fantastic if we could see examples of how that is and how it is measured to find out, is it affecting students in a positive or a negative way? And then also, if it's positive, how are we sharing that and to whom are we sharing it to?
Yeah.
And how is it continuing to grow, to become more part of the culture?
Yep. That's that sustainability aspect. Yep.
It would be good to see examples of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just have.
Were you done with your questions?
Yeah.
I just have a couple. First off, I'd like to thank you for recognizing the foundation classroom grants, because they do very much support the teachers willing to take risks. And then we'd always found when I was on the foundation, a point where innovation becomes, wait, now you're the 8th person. So does this actually need to become standard?
Right.
And so that was always that nice transition where it goes from innovation to standardization. But those teachers who are willing to take risks. And I did in my company did some innovation training this year. So I'm wondering about, is there any professional development for staff on some innovation tools and some best practices that they can then become sort of innovation leaders or coaches or something? Because honestly, something I learned this year is taking a page marker and putting it on a laminate page as a line marker is actually innovative, because you're using the page marker for a different purpose. It's innovation. And so it's sort of, it's the fun sort of stuff. And so I was learned, inside the sandbox, but also it has to be budget neutral.
Yeah.
And so what in your classroom can you do? But sometimes it even comes into removing steps. Is some teacher so fed up with something that has to do with technology? Why does she have to do 4 clicks? It could be innovative if she gets it down to 3 clicks.
Yeah.
And how do you celebrate those things and standardize them? I mean, it's just great opportunities, but giving the people the time and the training and those that want to take risks, the opportunity to take risk. I think it's fun.
And those will be the resources our team want to develop to provide our leaders in working with their staffs and department leaders of working with their departments about how to get some of those ideas around innovation and what that looks like, and to give them some training, so to speak, on looking at things differently and being willing to take risks and what that means, and being okay if you try something and it doesn't meet, okay, now we know that doesn't work, but to share that experience with others so that they don't make the same, we learn from each other and we celebrate with each other.
Our training included, we had to redesign a restaurant. And so our leader took out all the tables and chairs, and we had to, how are people going to eat? And you're uncomfortable at first, but then you start going, oh, it's a picnic restaurant. Yeah. And then she took away the menus, and we had no menus or tables and chairs.
Yeah.
Well, to bring in your own food and they cook your food for you, but it gets you thinking that suddenly you're ready to go from the restaurant to actually the work, and your brain is ripe for, why do I have 4 clicks to do this when I could do it in 3?
Yeah.
Is there research, and just thinking on that, is there research on individual skill sets that promote innovation? Like, I think about way back in my corporate days, I worked for a startup company, and I was on special projects, and it was like you get 6 months into it and then they would just scrap it, and then you go to a new thing and you're off and running. And I realized in reflection as I got older that kind of environment is not comfortable for everyone, and that we are who we are. So, you just can't force someone to say, oh, you need to be innovative in your classroom when they don't really have. Are there ways you can teach people to have those skill sets?
Well, there's a lot about the importance of people modeling that it's okay to try new things. And it's that a lot of that is the permission to, it doesn't have to necessarily be perfectly that I want to try something out, and I put all my best efforts into it, and I know I have the support of my team and my leader to be able to try this thing. That there's a lot about that. because it's sort of inherent in our nature, right? That we want things to be, especially when we're working with kids, we do want it to be perfect. And we want it to hit the mark. And so teachers are much like that. It's not really, they're not always really risk takers. So it's modeling that from a leadership level about it's okay to, if it's well thought out and it's in the best interest of kids, that is supported. And so there are a lot of examples of how to achieve that as leaders and support that and acknowledge where your staff is and where your team is and how to get them to the next step.
Well, and I kind of like that, like if we made it sort of like the equity journey, the innovation journey, because you are going to have people that are very comfortable. Okay, Caroline Mason's second grade class did it and it's successful, so maybe now I can adopt it.
Right.
Because they want to see it first, because you have, that they have statistics on who are the early adopters and who are the slow adopters. And so that probably happens in the schools too. You've got the risk takers and you've got I'll do it as soon as it's proven. And how do you move those students? It's proven a little faster, but.
Yeah, I like that, the innovation journey.
Yeah, because everybody's going to be on a different plane, but somebody who is going to be a follower doesn't feel bad that they're going to be a follower. Because if it's not in their wheelhouse to take risk.
The other thing is too, we want our kids to be prepared to succeed in college and career. Now, how many times have you heard in college and career they've said we're an innovative company? Well, what does that mean?
Right.
You sometimes have to fail at different things in order to know what is innovative and how to achieve that next level. So how can we say that our kids are prepared if they have not gone through this? How is this particular outcome going to benefit our kids as far as their ability to, I failed at that, so I'm going to start over again and be innovative and do things. You've got to make sure that we can measure that and we can put kids through, not, always failing, but through failing and learning that the next step might be an innovative new way of doing things. And also learning that failure does not mean failure. This particular process didn't work. There's another process that you can be innovative with and go through. So we have to figure out how are we doing this in response to wanting kids to be successful in career and college, and how that ties into how we're teaching them to learn.
I had one actual follow-up question for you. Is there at any point in this plan where we're going to be putting out prompts to staff and community members about the types of innovations that, us as a district would like to see, like around reading comprehension or around this type of, delivering lunch in a pandemic setting, things like that, are to kind of help get the juices flowing, as it were? Do we have any, because I see in this plan here, we're highlighting and we're celebrating innovation that's already happening, but are we prompting any of that innovation?
Right. The idea is moving forward as that idea of promoting and sustaining, we're sharing some of those ideas, and as an initiative team, looking for opportunities in different areas about trying some things out differently to sort of help prompt, in some cases, some areas that we could give them some ideas to go off of some examples of what other people have tried, that sort of thing.
Just even a question, right? Like this is a challenge that we're facing, and we want to see some innovative solutions from our community for it. Right. Can you help us and maybe tie it to a grant or something like that to help kind of drive
Right.
that?
That's a great idea to really promote what ideas are out there.
Just on a point of order, that's a really good point. You take dual language 10 years ago, communities wouldn't look at that as innovation, okay? It's really getting the message to our community, are we okay to be risk takers? Are we really okay to be risk takers? And that's a thing to ponder, right? Because I like the status quo, and it's okay to make a mistake as long as you don't hurt kids, right? But I think that's a really good point. And how do we message that? And I think the team and you all in communications does a masterful job of communicating things out. But I think as we approach innovation and we come up with new ideas, are we okay to be risk takers? all right? And I think that's a very important point, because as a teacher, I want the easiest thing I can do to impact my kids, right? I just want something I can enjoy and love in my classroom and try new things and have fun. Central office and schoolhouse leaders, principals, I want to try something different. It's outside the box. We haven't stepped outside the box in a while. Is it okay to do that and make a mistake? Yes. So that's something that we have to continue messaging. You know, I love this passion of what we're doing tonight, because this is where it begins. This is where we're laying the groundwork. But a very dear colleague of mine, you might know him, Arnie Duncan, said it best. Innovation is when you make a mistake and then you go back at it again and you understand that it's okay to be a risk taker. So that's a really good point that you said. When we message this and we try saying, and it could be small, it could be how we feed kids, or how we do, like you said, reading comprehension, or do we bring a program, let's say Cambridge down the road, anything we do to help impact kids, and it's going to step outside the box. So you're balancing staff and you're balancing, central office. So I think this is, just to close on this part, innovation, but if you take all the things that we discussed today, from social emotional learning to equity to this, it's evolving. That's why you have a strategic plan, right? It doesn't go away in a year or two. It just keeps evolving, gets better and bigger. It's a really good point.
It's interesting because this innovation piece ties to restorative practices and ties to like our grading system, right? So if we really want to be innovative and we really want to show kids it's okay to fail, then we need to get rid of the grading system we have in place right now and actually let kids make mistakes without screwing up their entire future, but that's a whole systemic change that goes to like what colleges accept and all other fun stuff. But to me, that is innovative. That would be something I would like to see.
And we have a committee working on the grading system.
All right.
But to add to, I think what Director Lysane was saying too, and what you were saying, Dr. Saltzman, it's how do we have some transparency with our failures? How do teachers talk about the risk they took so their students can learn? How do principals talk about the risk they took so teachers can learn? How do kids talk about the risk that they took so parents can learn? And so it becomes, part of our language that we took risk, we failed, but we moved on.
Yep.
And how can the adults show that to the kids? And the adults show it to each other?
There's a lot out there about learning from each other about the risks and failures, but there's a lot we can gain from that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a few concluding comments for tonight. I did want to remind you that this is basically it's the mid-year point of year one of a 5-year plan. And a strategic plan undertaken during a pandemic, migrating to an endemic. And that some of the reasons why we selected these particular initiatives out of the 27 all told were that some of them, it was just the right time for this work to happen. Or another one was stakeholder expectations, that we needed to do something. So I just wanted to say these 3 initiatives, I think, are prime examples of those. And I can't think of any work that we're doing that aren't more appropriate for the time and the place that we're in right now. And then I just wanted to say that over the next 5 years, as we see these initiatives evolve, I think you'll see a lot stronger connections. I think you saw a lot of connections tonight. I really appreciated the thinking at the high level that you did in the conversations and connecting the work to the priority student outcomes. So thank you very much. On behalf of the staff, we're now concluding our work session tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunn, and thank you, staff. It was a great presentation, and I do see the connection with all 3 of them, and it was the appropriate time, I truly believe, because it's relevant as far as what's going on right now and how we can continue to be innovative and supportive and inclusive, and the list goes on. So thank you so very much. Right now, if there aren't any other questions, board members, we'll then conclude. Dr. Saltzman, do you have any other comments?
No, ma'am.
We shall then adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Very helpful.
Do you want these back?